Welcome back, everybody, to the Holistic Actions Weekly Empower Hours, where Dr. Sarah Fox Chapman, Christine Shambro, myself, Jeff Feynman, and all of the community is here to walk alongside you guys as you all figure out what to do about your animal symptoms. And tonight it's my great pleasure to introduce, actually, Dr. Christina, why don't you introduce?
Well, actually, it's both Dr. Jeff's and my great pleasure to have Anitra Frazier with us. So, I was one of the first homeopathic veterinarians out there. I was in sort of the second group, and Anitra Frazier came there before me. So I've been learning holistic health, particularly for cats, but a lot applies to dogs, of course, as well, from Anitra Frazier. From very early on, I bought her very first book, The Natural Cat, and then I reveled in the tales that she told in It's a Cat's Life, which is another book she wrote, which is wonderful. And she and I have lectured together, spoken together, and she's going to really talk about how she got started and who she is. But I want you to know, those of you who submitted questions already, thank you so much for submitting your questions. Many of the answers, like for yours, Dorothy, about how to transition to a fresh food, are things we're going to be covering, Anitra's going to be covering. And we'll start with questions that you all are posting in the chat. And I will sort of get them to her when we can. Now, we may run out of time for all these questions, and some of them are way too detailed and deep for us to discuss on this call. So be sure, there are a couple of options. One is check what we do here. We help our members figure out what's the next step, how to transition, what kind of food is good if you have a cat that's hungry all the time, and how can you move them, shift them, and make them happier in general. The other is to know that Anitra Frazier herself does telephone consults. So hopefully she'll tell us a bit about that. But you can find it on her website, anitrafrazier.com, under telephone consults. So it is my deep honor to introduce a woman who probably lived the past 10 lifetimes as a cat, and who can talk cat to us, can talk interspecies with us. So Anitra, it is yours, and I'm blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. I am so very honored to be here. Your organization is one of my dreams come true. You have done it. Thank you, all of you people who are doing this, because it is so badly needed. A lot of times, the cat mommies and cat daddies want so badly to be holistic and to work holistically, and they do need extra guidance because none has ever been given to them. So you really are doing something very, very important. Before I say much of anything at all, I think that everyone here needs to know, who am I? Who are they listening to? Who is this person? Telling you things you can do and so on. Well, first of all, I want you all to know I do not have a degree in cats. My degree is in education. I am 85, and I have spent about 49 years working with cats. And my teachers, my very first teacher, I met at about the time that Christina was working with him, Dr. Richard Pitcairn. And Christina and I were together in one of his first classes that he gave. I mean, most of the people in the classes were all veterinarians. Then there was me. Thing about Dr. Pitcairn, I think Christina will agree, is I think he has the patience of a saint. To allow me to be in that class, he had to have the patience of a saint. And my very first teacher was Dr. Paul Rowan, who started me grooming cats. He didn't want to have to anesthetize and shave. So he just gave me the tools to do grooming, just said, here, go thou and groom cats. Maybe you'll like it. And that was how I started. And then I wanted to find really great grooming teachers. And I soon found out that the grooming schools were going about things in a way that I could not. I won't go into it. And I asked Dr. Rowan, who can I study with to study feline nutrition? I want to study with somebody really good. I want to get really good at it. And he said, well, there's nobody. Nobody ever asked these questions before. Oh my gosh. So who was left? The cats. They are the ones who taught me the most. After Dr. Pitcairn, I studied with Dr. Michael Dim, and he remains my holistic vet. I feel very honored and lucky to have him. There's a section in my book, Choosing Methods of Treatment and Seeking Professional Help, where I go into how do you find a vet and how do you keep your local vet on your side and not offend him if you're working with a holistic vet, and that kind of thing. Okay. I have to tell you a funny thing. I was really new and I was working with Dr. Pitcairn, and I was trying to study herbs and study nutrition and study interspecies communication, everything at once. And I found this herb that I thought was really great. And everything in my book, I've tried everything on my own body first before I tried it on a cat, because you had to honor the cats. I mean, it could be too spicy or too sour or anything. It can be frightening because they're much more sensitive than we are. So I was working with herbs and I got a sore throat, and I found this marvelous herb to put into your salt water when you gargle, you know? And I said to Dr. Pitcairn, I found this wonderful herb. You should try it because it's really great. And I used it on my own throat. And it's called, he said, what is it? What did you find? And I said, it's called Echinacea. He says, what did you say it was called? Echinacea. Would you mind spelling that? He said. And I said, Echinacea. And he said, I think most people would pronounce that echinacea. So gently. He didn't want to hurt my feelings. He didn't want to embarrass me. I think most people, echinacea. That's how new and raw I was when I started out, and when I first met Dr. Christina. Okay.
So Anitra, get us started maybe with interspecies communication. I think that's such an important piece of what you're talking about.
Yes, and it comes into play whenever you do anything else. Basically, your mind and the cat's mind and all the minds on the earth can be divided into 3 sections: intellect, emotion, and instinct. Us humans, we're mostly intellect plus some emotion and almost no instinct, unless we've decided we want to open ourselves to that and really try to develop it. Cats are mostly instinct. I learned most about this from a feral who I had to foster for a while, Smokey. He taught me so much. They're mostly instinct, especially ferals. Second is emotion. They are much more emotional than you and I. And last of all is intellect, because they can have intellect and use intellect, But they have to, as we have to open up to instinct, they have to open up to intellect. Cats and most animals do not understand a negative. I found when I was trying to communicate when I groomed, I was saying, I won't hurt you, don't be afraid. Two negatives. I won't hurt you translates in the cat's mind to, oh my God, she's talking about harm and her and me. Oh no, and they'd get very upset. I had to learn to say, oh, we're all safe here. This feels so good. Oh, it's nice to get your furs nice and smooth. Do you know what? Your tongue can go right down to the skin on the first lick, and you can scratch that itchy place. Now, you notice when I'm saying this, I'm using a bit of emotion, like you can scratch that itchy place. I feel the satisfaction. A great communicator once said to me, that was Samantha Curry. She once said, always include the emotion. Emotion is like the stamp that makes the letter go. If you don't put a stamp on the letter, you can write a great letter, nobody will know. Include the emotion. So when you're trying to communicate with your cat, keep everything in the positive. What I do want, what we do like, what we do hope, what I would like him to do, and add the emotion. In the food section of in the diet section of my book, I say, when you put your food down on the floor, there were several questions here about feeding and how to get them to eat. When you put the food on the floor, you should be salivating. You should be thinking, oh my gosh, this is so delicious. This is so juicy, and really think it and feel it. That will help you. And you use the communication whenever you do anything at all else. Dr. Christina, shall I go on to these questions? I want to thank everyone for the questions. There were so many of them, and some of them were so complex.
Yes, some of them were too complex. Let's do a little overview still, because many of them will get covered. So
right.
First off, you were talking, because you're talking about interspecies communication. When we have cats living with us, we're putting them in a environment that isn't natural for them. So enrichment and can prevent behavior problems, but also can reverse engineer ones. And Dr. Jean Hovey, who may or may not be here tonight, is going to be living in a van with her cat. And she wonders, how can I enrich that cat's life?
Okay. Cats exercise vertically as well as horizontally. And, you know, Jackson Galaxy has done a beautiful job of exploring and creating and writing about, thank goodness for this, writing about how to enrich your house for a cat, how to build things. He has a book out. His first book was Cat Daddy, and his second book was Catification. If you're interested in that, enriching the house for the cat, get a copy of Jackson Galaxy's Cat Daddy. When you're introducing new cat to the household and trying to get cats to come together and enjoy each other, you want to, this is where you learn about enriching the house, because you want to have those cats have new experiences in common. How do you do that? Move the furniture around. Think of like the bookshelves, they couldn't get to them before, but if you take a chair from the left-hand side, move it to the right-hand side in front of the bookcase, they're going to be able to jump to the seat, jump to the back, jump onto a bookcase shelf. And both of them will have it in common. I'll tell you what I recommend for people who are trying to create enrichment. Get a plank, a wooden plank that's about 6 inches wide or a little more maybe, but 6 inches is good. And about more than 6 feet or more long. Then every day before you go to work, you can take that plank and put it in a different place. First day you put it, make sure it's nice and firm, it can't move. Maybe you put it on the floor in front of the bookcase and it's abutting the bookcase, it can't get moved. And then on the other end of the plank, you put it on the seat of the armchair. Maybe next morning you put one part on the seat of the armchair and the other side on the seat of the couch. So you have a bridge so that the cats together will look at it and say, what is this? Are you going to go on it? I don't want to go on. Are you go on it? You want to go on it? Maybe I'll go on it. I'll go on it if you go on it. And they have a thing in common to experience. Think of all the ways you could use that plank. You could put the plank, you can store it behind a door so it's not going to get in your way, or, you know, even in a small apartment, we all have doors.
I just love that plank idea. Isn't that great?
Yeah, see, it gets you creative too. Yeah, moving things around and using plank and playing games.
Oh, that's right.
See, I like a knotted sash because you can, nobody's going to swallow any part of it. You can't hurt anything. The cats are divided into 2 categories, the bird catchers and the mousers. The bird catchers, like my Wally, he likes to reach up and hit things out of the air. Another thing you do with cats in common to enrich their lives can be the giving of treats in a certain way. A lot of cats, you get a cat that is older and he or she is not playing as much. Maybe they put on weight. Maybe they have heart problems and the vet has said, gentle activity, please, okay? The cat uses his nose and his ears a lot more than his eyes. So sometimes if you have a treat and you say, I want him to catch this treat or chase this treat to get some exercise, great idea. But you throw the treat and the cat does think, what, I don't know, why did she do that? What, I don't know, I'd like to have the treat, but I have to wait for her to get the treat and put it in front of me. Get the treat, hold it under the, lower than the chin, and about, 1 to 3 inches in front of the cat. Make sure that they get a sniff of that treat. And then to begin, don't throw it into the next room under the piano. No. Just throw it a little bit. So he's gotten the idea of, oh, treat. And oh, there it is. You threw it close enough so that the cat with the weak eyes, weaker than us, will see it. And then you do the same thing under the nose and then throw, but you throw further and further and further. You do this with 2 cats that are not friends yet. Just make sure that you throw one treat in one direction and the other treat in the other direction, and they have an experience in common. And it was fun and delicious. This will enhance.
Anitra, that's the perfect lead in. Fun, delicious, smelling. Let's talk about food. What's the best food? What canned food? No dry food and fresh food.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. I have heard you lecture on the difference between canned food, dry food, and raw food. And I have used your approach many a time. The closest to nature. My first vet who started me grooming, Dr. Rowan, had a wonderful saying. He said, Anitra, if you keep as close as you can to nature, you'll never go very far wrong. The raw food is as close as we can get to nature. I mean, you can't, I don't think we would even want to, if we could, import living mice and let them kill the mice. That would not be very good. But you use raw food, will be as close as you can to nature. And then second best is canned food. There will be times in your life that you'll have to use canned food. Things will come up. One thing that I feel strongly about in holistic health is that I think when I was first doing this, I didn't keep the owner in mind as much as I should. I learned the owner is a very big part of the cat's life and the holistic approach. So if I say to my clients on the phone, listen, if there's anything I tell you that doesn't work for you, either it's too expensive or it's too far to drive to get it, or you just, anything, tell me, because you, the owner, have to be content and happy and feel good about it. That's very important. There will be times when you will have to use canned food. Dry food, I use dry food. I use Stella and Chewy's meals morsels. It's dry, it's crunchy, it's raw, it's freeze dried. So instead of using the real dry food, I use Stella and Chewy's meals, and I use that as the treat. I may use a dry food if the cat has always had that dry food and I have to start out with it in order to get them over onto a canned and a raw food. I'll do that. There's ways you can crumble the dry food on top of the raw if you're trying to get the cat onto raw food. It's very, very important that the cat's food should be pleasurable, delicious. Dr. Rowan also said at one point, stress is the cat's worst enemy. And I've always kept that in mind. So I want to make the food always very, very delicious. It should be a regular fiesta when the cat eats the food. So I have a whole bunch of what I call bribe foods, and I try to make them good. Like using, if they like it, is the Stella and Chewy's meals. My cats like the duck and goose little morsels of food. You can, crumble them on the top. Another thing is when you're changing to the new food, if you want to make a change, a couple of you people that asked questions, you included that into changing foods, how to get the cat to eat. The first thing you want to remember is you need hunger. A very important rule is never leave food available between meals. I go into that in the book. There's a whole bunch of wonderful things you can accomplish simply by always taking away the food between meals, because the cats need that time of not smelling food for the body to cleanse itself. It's the olfactory center in the brain that does a whole bunch of things when food is smelled. Smelling food is very important because in nature, there are times when cats don't get to eat. If the earth is covered with snow, they may have to fast for a couple of days. So Mother Nature set it up to help the cats to be able to live and have babies and thrive. When a cat smells food, a whole bunch of stuff happens in the olfactory center. The olfactory center signals for a whole bunch of stuff to happen to set the body up for eating, so that even if it's a small meal, they'll get all the good of it. The metabolism slows down.
I can't.
The main blood flow goes to the stomach. The digestive juices begin to flow. The body gets really set up to receive the food and make good use of it. This is marvelous, but not 24 hours a day. If the metabolism is slow, 24 hours a day, that means that waste products will build up and back up, and it will have a dirty body. Such cats get dandruff. Always, if I see a cat with dandruff, I say, are you leaving the food available between meals? Take it away. Take the food away. Give them 20 minutes to eat. That's a good long time. And as you take away the food, you say, that's all right, darling. You don't have to finish. It's quite all right. And you're going to get more food later on anyway. So you take it up. And if you're in a hurry, you say, oh, I can't clean it up. I'll be late for work. Stick it in the fridge. They can't smell it. If the dirty dish or the dish with food left is in the fridge, they'll be fine. They won't be able to smell it. So you're trying to change them to a new food. Be sure to take away the food. Oh, I found out somewhere when I was reading that it takes like 10 days of removing the food between meals before that metabolism revs up to a normal pace. So when you're trying to change over the food, don't think that they're already, their metabolism is fine now and they'll get hungry. If it's only the second day you've been taking up the food, keep persisting. Just like Dr. Pitcairn said, stress is the cat's worst enemy. I say that impatience is the caregiver's worst enemy. I'm a very impatient person. I think I found out that most Western people are very impatient. Give yourself time, give the cat time, and persist, and call for help. Say, you can always call me and say what the problem is, and we'll talk about different ways of approaching the problem, or call your vet. Or your vet can certainly give you some ideas perhaps also.
And Anitra, I have a quick question for you because it so applies here. How does feeding a raw food diet help their teeth? And can you feed bigger chunks, and will that help keep their teeth and prevent needing dentals all the time?
Yeah. One of the questions had to do with going for dental surgery and so on. Feeding raw food helps anything and everything. As I went through all those questions and I was writing down my suggestion, what I was going to tell these people if I was focusing on one of those, what couple of things always came up. One was raw food, and the other was intestinal flora, probiotics. In almost every case, I would say, oh, well, raw food would certainly be a big help here, might cure the whole thing, just raw food. And I have seen that happen, where all they did was switch to raw food. In fact, right into mental problems, nervousness, or licking themselves raw, things like that. Raw food does all kinds of fantastic things that you don't even expect. You don't expect raw food to make a nervous cat happier and calmer and better able to deal with life and deal with the other cats and so on. Or take a very aggressive cat and slow him down and calm him down and let him enjoy life instead of always being ready to attack or make problems. So it will help with the gums. If you have problem teeth, you're going to have, it's probably problem gums going along with it, of course. Problem gums are a difficult thing to correct impossible to correct without raw food, I would say. I would go on a limb and say that. Impossible unless you're feeding raw food. Let me tell you something that I found out, and I was rather surprised. You can buy raw food now. It's a good money maker. People have found out, a lot of people have found out how great raw food is, but they don't have time, or they don't know how or something, and so they want to buy raw food. And I had a client like that. She had plenty of money, and I was having dinner with her later on, but she came with me as I had to make a stop because another client had me come in and I made the raw food for her. Okay. So I feed the cats, and every day, every cat I feed, when I do a feeding, I always end up with throwing the treat across the floor, and the cats run after the treat because I like to give a little exercise. This apartment, the entrance door was followed by a long hall and then a very, very large, commodious living room. And I would get the cats to come to me at the entrance to the apartment and then hurl the treats all the way down to the windows at the other end of the living room. So I did that. And my friend and client said, my goodness, those cats fly. They are flying because they go pelting down and then fly over the chair to get the treats at the other side of the chair. She said, I've been feeding raw food, but my cats don't do that. I've been buying my food at the pet store, and it says raw. Why don't I'm going to start making my own food the way you made this lady's food tonight. And I'm going to see if that changes my cats. Long story short, she did it. It did change her cats. And I was left saying, why is this so? I really want the store-bought raw food to work. I want it because a lot of people can't make their own food for one reason or another, or they're vegetarians, they don't understand, they're living with carnivores, they can't touch the meat or something like that. I wanted it to be true. And I found out that it's not true. It is different if you buy it. So why? I had to find out why. I think one reason is that the companies making raw food don't want to get sued if the food becomes contaminated in between the factory and the transportation and the store refrigerator, that the factory doesn't know how they have the refrigerator set, how cold it is, and they're worrying about getting sued. So what will increase shelf life? We'll just pasteurize the food. We can still call it raw. That is a possible answer. And so I tell my clients, call the company and ask them how they can guarantee that the food is safe. What do they do to guarantee that the food is safe? Don't say, do you cook your food? Because of course they're going to say no. But just say, what do you do to guarantee the food is safe? And if they say pasteurized, you say, oh, very reassuring. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And you don't buy that food.
So I just want to reiterate, because the food that's made commercially is missing the love that you talk about putting into your food, and it's missing the emotion. Even if they do it in the factory and make it with love and mantras and all of that, by the time it gets to you, I think that's probably gone away a little bit.
Yeah. That was such a wise comment. Thank you so much, Christina.
You are welcome.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I have always recommended of yours in terms of feeding, and especially for geriatric cats and ill cats, is your bone broth. You want to talk about your high calcium chicken broth?
The chicken soup, yeah.
High calcium chicken
Yeah.
soup. Everybody, this is one. And by the way, a few people are asking, is this for dogs or as well as cats? Absolutely. If you're trying to switch your dog to
Yeah.
food, do you want to just shove it down or do you want to salivate over it? It's just cats
Yes.
need it a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
So yeah, chicken soup, high calcium.
yeah, the chicken soup. A lot of times you want to hide a liquid medication in chicken soup, or the cat is getting diarrhea, and as soon as you give solid food, the diarrhea comes. There's a lot of times when the vet will say, put them on a liquid diet, and that would be chicky soup, and then I get the call, but she won't eat it. So the first question I ask, this is rule number one. This will make the difference between the cat saying, oh my God, this is delicious, I want more, and the cat saying, what the Sam Hill is this? You expect me to eat this? Okay, rule number one. Always make chicken soup out of already cooked chicken. If the chicken is slightly overcooked, even better, because that's the way it's going to taste wonderful. If you make chicken soup out of raw chicken, you take any part of the chicken, put it in water and cook, I don't care how many hours, 8 hours, it's not going to taste as delicious. The best chicken to choose, of course, organic, but the best parts, you want something that will turn to jelly afterwards in the refrigerator. The soup will end up jellied. Thighs, because they're very easy, they're easy to get the chicken off the bone. Add a couple of necks and backs. You put in a couple of necks and backs, it's going to be thick and delicious. I broil the chicken because when you deglaze or clean the broiler pan, that is the most strong flavored and delicious of all. Make the chicken well done and put the chicken in the water and then deglaze the broiler pan. It means clean it, put water on it, put the whole pan over top of the burners, turn it on low, and scrape around in the water. It's like you're making gravy. It's where your grandmother always made gravy. Clean that pan, get all of the burned chicken and the burned fat into the liquid, and then pour that into the chicken soup pot. You'll have success. At the end, when you say, listen, it's been cooking for 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, let it simmer down so that you don't have a little bit of chicken in a big pot of water. No, no, no. Let the boil it down, let it simmer till the chicken soup, the liquid, is only a couple of inches above the pieces of chicken floating in there. You pour off your broth, put it aside to cool, and then you don't want to waste anything. So you put some cold water on the chicken that's in the pot, and you wring it out like a washcloth, and all that broth that comes out of the chicken when you're wringing it out is going to be kind of a milky color. It's going to have a different kind of a look from your first. Pour that in with your first broth. It's good, it's delicious. And then you throw away the chicken because you got all the good out of it. There's nothing much left there anyhow, just throw it away. And then you store your broth in plastic Tupperware. Use the half pint, unless you have lots of cats, because you want to be able to put it in the freezer so you can grab it anytime you suddenly must have chicken soup. You got it. It's in your freezer. You take it out and you just use that half pint. There's more of them in there when you need more. And you're set. Many's the time I have sold my half pints of chicken soup to my clients when they suddenly needed some chicken soup, and it was not practical to wait a day till you make your chicken soup. They wanted it right away.
So I think we talk to people at Holistic Actions about creating your holistic healthcare team now and not waiting until they're very ill and you're scrambling because you don't like what your conventional vet said. And it's the same thing with high calcium chicken broth. The same thing with having a little bit of backup foods. I recommend trying lots of different foods with the cats so you know what they love.
Yes.
Because some you have great fried foods and some don't like tomato sauce. And some veterinarians like Dr. Hovey is a little not so much good on the fish. So you need to there's no one right answer. I think that's an important thing for people to know, but being prepared ahead of time. If you've talked to Anitra Frazier and done a consult with her, she's on your holistic healthcare team. And if you get in a pinch, they can then call you. They know you, and they can get on in with you. So what about geriatric cats?
Oh, that's my favorite. I love working with geriatric cats.
And particularly Cinnamon is one that had a cat at 17 who started crying at night. And we see that a lot in geriatric cats.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Geriatric cats. The first thing I tell my people with geriatric cats, make a snug retreat. A snug retreat, capital S, capital R, find it in my book, is a liquor carton. Cats love cardboard boxes. You all probably have found that out. But you don't just put the box down, you turn it on its side. And the best size is a liquor box, like a Johnny Walker or a wine carton. Put it on its side because that puts a roof over the head of the cat. And in ancient times with the dinosaurs and all, cats all had to be careful not to be scooped up by an eagle or a flying dinosaur or something. It's very calming, especially one of you had a wild cat, feral cat, especially the feral might enjoy this. Put it on its side, and don't put it up next to the wall facing out so everybody can see the entrance. No, make it a secret. Put it like behind the couch, or put it sideways against the wall, but the entrance is facing the other wall. So the cat has to actually go a little bit around a corner to get into the box. And then she's totally covered and protected. When you're trying to take a stitch in time, there's all, you have a geriatric cat and you say, oh, I know this is the time of life when something could happen. Something could suddenly be revealed. Early on, all her life, you have watched her. Is there any reason she ever, I always ask this question of people, has your cat ever had to go to the vet for any reason whatsoever? Was it upper respiratory? Was it crystals in the urine? Well, what happened? Was it runny eyes? What was discovered? What was the diagnosis? And then maybe the vet gave you drugs and it suppressed the whole thing. And you say, oh, she's cured. No, she isn't. It was simply suppressed. Well, you all know that as well as I do. You're holistic. But once even if you work holistically, you say, oh, we've gotten beyond that. Now she gets no more crystals because I've been giving her that egg yolk, which acidified the urine, and boy, it worked great. When your cat is geriatric, sit yourself down and remember all those little problems that you solved during her lifetime. Did any of them come back twice? All of those things you can, now that you're worried, what you can do about it is include the holistic treatment in her day-to-day life, in her food. Well, she had crystals when she was 2. Let's add the egg yolk again. Let's put the egg yolk in the food. Crystals can't form in an acid urine. Egg yolk is rich in methionine, whose property it is to acidify the urine. Especially if she liked the egg yolk, and the fat in the egg yolk will be excellent for her. And if for some reason, some wild reason, you're still not using raw food, the egg yolk is raw. And it's natural, it's delicious, and it's cheap. What could it hurt?
And briefly, what else is good about eggs? There's an egg shell and there's that membrane lining the egg.
Yeah, yeah. See how much of it she'll take and enjoy, and you can include it. Someone told me once, Dr. Christina, that it's a good idea to toast the eggshells before you crush them up for the calcium to put it in the food, you know.
It's just easier to crush, I think. And that's only if they're not organic and they're coated.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't have to. If you're getting organic eggs and they crush fine, don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always wondered, why are we doing this? I always ask, why do we do this?
That's right.
Another thing is to use, remember I said there were 2 things, raw food and intestinal flora. A young healthy cat, age 3, can maintain its own intestinal flora pretty nicely, unless somebody comes along, gives them an antibiotic, or something else happens, or has some kind of poisoning happens, or intestinal parasites. Then you have to replace the flora. For an older cat, I would go through just 1 bottle of Jarrow Dophilus. Jarrow is a nice company, really a fine company that's famous for its intestinal flora. If you go, it'll be in the refrigerator in the health food store, not the pet store, the health food store. And you'll see definitely different numbers. One will say 10 billion in each capsule, and another one will say 40 billion in each capsule. I always say, get the strongest one, and just empty a capsule into the food 1 meal a day, and go through 1 container, and then the cat will probably maintain it. Well, if the cat's older, maybe, you know, take the flora too. Again, it couldn't hurt. A lot of times I have people taking the same thing the cat is taking, because it looks like there's a crossover there. It happens a lot with people bonded to their cats. And you just every once in a while give her another capsule to refresh the flora. I would do that. Another thing for the senior cat, most of us feed 2 meals a day, right? I do mostly. So often when I get a client with a geriatric cat, and obviously they called me because something went wrong, one of the things I have them do is consider 3 meals a day, because that way the stomach is less crowded. They'll get the good of it, because it's not what your cat swallows that is going to do them good. It's what the cat's body can assimilate and use and digest, assimilate and use. So if you feed 3 meals a day, space them far apart as you can, and religiously take up the food between meals, get rid of the food between meals. The smell of food, by the way, if you have some like Stella and Chewy's or something, or God forbid, dry food in the house, either put it in a screw top container or in the refrigerator, or flush it down the toilet. If it's dry food, flush it down the toilet. So they don't, it's the smell of food, not the taste, the smell of food that triggers the olfactory senses to make the trigger of slowing the metabolism and doing all that. So be very strict with yourself about that, especially for a geriatric cat. You do not want a backup of wastes in a geriatric cat. And your vet is going to love you, especially your holistic vet. So there's egg
Did
yolk.
you mention heating?
No, I did
pads?
not. Thank you. Thank you.
That was because you told me that earlier.
Cats don't digest cold food very well. Remember, that cat is much more sensitive than you and me. It's much more sensitive. Don't heat the food in a way that's going to cook it. Let me tell you the best way to heat food. You use the spigot, the hot water spigot. You put hot water into a bowl or a pan, and you put the serving of food into, you can use a heated mug. I have stainless steel mixing bowls the size of a teacup, and that's what I use. And the stainless steel transfers the heat beautifully. But if I didn't, I would use a mug. You run the hot water in the mug. When the mug is hot, pour out the water, put in your serving of food, press it against the hot sides of the mug. And if you feel that, and you stir it after leaving it against the hot sides for 15 or 20 seconds, stir it around, put your finger in it. See how hot or how cool it is. It only has to be room temperature, like warm-ish room temperature. It doesn't have to be warm. And if it's not warm enough for your taste, stand it in the hot water that you got out of the spigot that's not hot enough to do any kind of cooking. That's easy enough.
Whoops. There's one other thing that I know can apply to a senior cat, but also it was a question for cats in general. Senior cats often don't use their litter box because the sides are too high, right? And then move on to, if you have a younger cat who's not using the litter box, what do you do with that? So both of those.
Yeah. I had a client once who had to cut the sides down, make a little entrance so his cat could stroll into the litter box. I thought that was a very good owner. I mean, really sensitive owner that did that. Sometimes I find if you carry your cat to the litter box, you do what you do if you're stuck and you have to be adult cat to a kitten who has not been taught to use the litter box. You can do this with an elderly cat who is having problems, and one thing that can cause this, by the way, one way you can kind of get rid of the problem, if you're hydrating the cat has, say, kidney disease. You're hydrating the cat, good for you, very, very good. The cat is drinking a lot of water. A normal cat drinks water twice a week, if that. I've had people say, oh, my cat's a good drinker. I say, oh my goodness. If the cat's drinking every day, get her diagnosed, something's wrong. It may be just salty food, but it could be a problem anyhow.
Or dry food.
Or dry food can cause this. Dry food causes all sorts of grief. Where was I? Okay. If you want to, it makes all that water going through dilute the urine. The elderly cat may have dilute urine and not feel, oh, I have to go to the litter box, because it's too dilute. If the elderly cat, the signal. Egg yolk lets acidify the urine so she can feel the signal again. You can try that. It couldn't hurt. All the side effects are beneficial. I love egg yolk for the cats. just lost my ear thing. Okay. For kittens, I had one of, at one point, I took in a cat that was pregnant. She had kittens. She was a purebred Siamese, a darling, darling, sweet cat. I adored her. She wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. She did not teach the kittens to use the litter box. And I see kittens squatting in the middle of the floor. Big Purr, who was alive at that time, was very early in my career. He was my cat in chief. Had a conniption, went over there and took the kitten and put him in the litter box, and gave him a hit alongside the head. But he couldn't do enough to make it, to teach the kitten. I had to help. It was up to me. You get a washcloth and wrap your index finger or your middle finger in a washcloth, hold it under the hot water spigot, and when it gets almost too hot for you to stand, because it's going to cool off before it touches the kitten, make it good and hot, wring it out and take the kitten to the litter box and take the finger with the washcloth, reach it under the tail, between the hind legs, up towards the tummy, press it and stroke down the tummy, down to the anus, up the anus, and see if she pees. Do it again. In and back on the tummy, to the anus, up the anus. The warm wetness will feel like the mummy's tongue, which should have been used in that way. Big Purr tried, he did the best he could, but I had to help. And that's what did it. Do it frequently, more frequently, certainly do it after every feeding. Anytime you see a kitten nursing, you got to step up when he's finished, take him to the box and do your little choreography with the index finger or the middle finger. And when she pees, then you've got to be mummy's tongue saying good kitten. Mummy's tongue saying good kitten goes from the nose, up the forehead, between the ears, down the backs of the ears. You use thumb and middle finger is the best. Get this finger out of the way and you go this way. And back of the ears and down the back of the ears to the sides of the throat and down the back. That's a petting technique. Good kitten, good kitten. Yes, this is right. This is right. Now she wants to go to sleep. You carry her back and put her near mommy's tummy or inner thighs. You can do the same washcloth on finger stroke with an elderly cat.
Excellent. So Anitra, I hate to say this, but we're out of time.
Oh God.
It's been a wonderful hour. And I will send you the chat because there've been 2 people at least who have been working with you for years, who've read your books, who just love you and have said, be there. And I just want to, because one popped in just now, this happens at the last minute, hard crunchy treats like Kittles, you still need to not do those. Okay. There are plenty of other good treats for your cats.
Treats, people say they want to clean the teeth. Those don't clean the teeth.
Nope.
You can clean the teeth with raw food.
Much better.
Or
So
you can
good.
give raw chicken neck vertebrae also.
Yep.
If they're raw, don't give cooked chicken necks, but raw is okay. And that can clean. You can go in with your thumbnail and clean.
Yep.
I welcome anyone who would like, several people who asked questions. I just had to make a note, call me, because it was too complex. And I could not give an answer of any sort without knowing more about that particular cat.
Yep, absolutely. I've sent emails to 2 of the people already that had their emails there.
Yeah.
So
should I give
yes.
Christine, should I
Yes,
give
please.
my number? I'll be happy to.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
My number Write it down, and then you can call if you want, don't call if you don't want. You'll have it, it's under your power. Okay. 212, it's New York, 212-663-0122. I'm dirt cheap because I'm holistic. I know it'll take a long time. So I charge for my time, and it's $20 for each 15 minutes. And the first consultation always takes longer than the others because I don't know anything. I have to ask you 1,000 questions. And what I try to do is empower you.
And Jennifer and Andy said, it's worth every penny times 3.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
and we've put the telephone in the chat twice, Teresa. So, and I will be editing the chat, and you can save it for yourself. Anybody who wants to save your chat, at the open up chat, click chat, and then go down to the bottom, and there is a smiley face, and next to it are 3 dots. Click on the 3 dots and it says save chat. Click on save chat and it saves it to somewhere on your computer. Who knows? It shows up somewhere for me. So we will have Anitra Frazier back, and post your questions, those of you who are members, on the forum. If you're not a member for Holistic Actions, check us out, holisticactions.com. And we hear wonderful speakers like this every week. Although I have to say, Anitra's my favorite deer. I love her dearly. So she's been out there biking around for decades, and definitely love you. So
if you're in New York, I can make a house call. I travel by bicycle.
That's pretty amazing. I love it. Okay, lots of kudos in the Dr. Jeff, off to you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Anitra, for consulting with my kitty, and thank you for coming tonight. So thank you, and thank you all.